Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Hidey-ho.
Hidey-ho, everybody! When I mention the name Chucky, what's the first thing you think of? Maybe a little guy with small shoes and red hair that haunts your nightmares and remains printed on your eyelids even as you wake drenched in a cold sweat? No, not that Chucky. It's this sweet little guy in overalls who just wants to play and just so happens to be inhabited by the soul of a deranged serial killer. Honestly, I'd take him over this guy any day. Chucky is a horror icon, the best killer doll to ever grace the silver screen, and I can honestly say that I love the little shit. From his signature hair color to his fire outfit to his quippy one-liners, Chucky is easily one of the most recognizable horror characters. His looks as well as the franchise's tone have gone through many iterations over the last 35 years, Chucky having appeared in 8 movies as well as a TV show on Sci-Fi. The legend of Chucky began in 1988 with the release of Child's Play, written by franchise creator, super cool dude, and Domballa daddy, Don Mancini. Mancini is a blessing to the horror genre.
Do you want to see a Kubrick Chucky movie or no? He just take the fun out of it.
He's a huge fan of movies, especially horror movies, and you can tell by the amount of time and effort he puts into the Child's Play franchise. And from everything I've heard about the guy, he's an absolute joy to work with.
Where is Don?
Child's Play is one of the rare franchises where the original creator has written every installment, except for the remake, we don't talk about that, and Don's even directed a few himself. His continued involvement is what contributes to the movies feeling cohesive and like one continuous story. Every movie, except the remake, and the show are all part of the same timeline, with the events of each movie considered canon. To do this with only minimal retconning is an impressive feat, especially when you consider how the timelines of other horror franchises have turned out. With the exception of the Scream franchise, I can't think of another horror franchise that feels as cohesive as Chucky's, and that's only part of the reason why I think Child's Play is in contention for the best horror franchise of all time. With a good mix of horror, humor, inventive kills, and an overall enjoyment of the creative process, what's not to love about our favorite little good guy doll? That being said, there will always be some movies you like more than others, and I've taken it upon myself to rank all 8 movies and the show from worst to best. This list is highly subjective, as are all movie rankings, and is only meant to reflect which versions of Chucky I enjoy most at this point in my life. And I reserve the right to change my mind whenever and however often I please. So sit back, relax, and take a trip with me and my good pal Charles. Number 9, Child's Play 2019.
You are my buddy.
As a big fan of the franchise, 2019's Child's Play remake feels like a slap in the teeth. The movie was made without the involvement or blessing of Mancini, which feels straight up disrespectful.
Where is Don?
The man clearly loves the world he's created. You don't do a remake without getting the okay from Don. That's my opinion. On top of that, the movie just misses the mark. It's devoid of most of the endearing aspects that made the original a hit, and fans of the franchise will be disappointed to find that the movie doesn't feel like a Child's Play movie at all. While Chucky has always been funny, the remake tries a different brand of humor, which falls flat most of the time.
This is for Tupac.
The silly, fun voodoo element has been replaced by something far more lame, and the movie ends up feeling like any generic 2010s horror movie. Honestly, and I can't confirm this, but it feels like the movie started as an original screenplay, and some studio executives thought it sounded just enough like Child's Play to shoehorn Chucky into the plot and profit off the name recognition. And, you know, don't do that.
Stop it.
Make it its own thing. Take Megan, for example. Or M3gan, as I like to call it. Judging from the promotional materials, that easily could have been turned into a Child's Play movie, but they didn't, because James Wan and Akela Cooper are not hacks. The last thing I'll say is that if Aubrey Plaza, Brian Tyree Henry, and Mark Hamill as the voice of Chucky can't save your movie, you done fucked up. Number 8, Child's Play 3. Chucky goes to military school. Yes, that is the plot. I feel like a good alternative title for this movie would have been Chucky Goes Commando. Coming out in 1991, only a year after Child's Play 2, Don Mancini was rushed into writing the 3rd installment, and you can definitely tell. Child's Play 3 is Chucky just kinda doing his same old shtick in a new location, and not a very fun one at that. Andy is played by a different actor than in the first 2 movies, this time Justin Whalen, who makes the most of what he's given and I think does a good job. However, Alex Vincent is a fan favorite and will always be the real Andy Barclay, so something just feels off without him. There are some cringe-inducing lines and one of casual racism.
Just think, Chucky's gonna be a bro.
But ultimately, this movie's cardinal sin is just being rather uninteresting. There are still some all-time Chucky lines.
Don't fuck with the Chuck!
And some memorable characters, like the Academy Barber, played by Andrew Robinson from Hellraiser, who is just so horny for cutting hair. In the end, Child's Play 3 isn't good, but it's also not that bad as far as horror sequels go. I'd compare it to Scream 3 in terms of third installments. Weaker than the first two, but at least it's not Leatherface Texas Chainsaw 3. Number 7, Curse of Chucky.
There is no God.
Putting Curse of Chucky this low on the list is probably gonna be an unpopular opinion, but it is what it is. I'll start by saying that I still like Curse, even though it's at number 7. I just like the other movies more. Curse is Don Mancini's second directorial effort, and many people say it's kind of a return to form for the franchise after Seed, and I mostly agree. Curse feels more similar in tone to the first Child's Play than the sequels. It's more atmospheric and less silly, a proper horror movie. The thing is, though, I like it when the franchise gets a little more wacky and pushes the envelope, so a more grounded sequel like Curse ends up lower on my list. After the wild rides that are Bride and Seed, Curse just felt ever so slightly less exciting for me. I will say, however, that the introduction of Nika Pierce is a wonderful addition to the franchise. It's great to have a horror protagonist that uses a wheelchair, but isn't defined by it. I guess Texas Chainsaw Massacre gave us Franklin, but he was annoying as shit.
Sally! 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 Sally!
It also helps that Nika is played by Fiona Dourif, a very talented actress who just so happens to be the daughter of Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky. It's a family affair. There are also some LGBTQ+ characters continuing the trend from Bride and Seed, and it's always good to see that representation.
Surprise, motherfucker!
One last thing I wanted to mention was that for some of Curse, Chucky's face looks janky as hell. Sorry, Charles, but I think you need to cool it with the facelifts. Number 6, Seed of Chucky.
They're executing Martha Stewart this morning.
This one is tough for me. For a long time, Seed was the much maligned black sheep of the Child's Play franchise, but I think it gets more hate than it deserves. And in more recent years, I think some people are starting to warm to it a bit more. Placing this movie is tough for me because I like Seed of Chucky, and I struggle with where to rank it because it's tonally much different than most Child's Play / Chucky movies. Truthfully, it could probably land anywhere between 5 and 7, depending on the day you ask me. And placing it above Curse will probably baffle some people, but let me attempt to explain. Seed of Chucky is good ol' horror camp. It's Don Mancini's directorial debut, and he wanted to take the movie in a full-on comedic direction. I can maybe understand being disappointed if you go into it expecting something more serious, but if you're prepared and in the right headspace, the comedy is a dang good time, and the movie is quite unique. Take some of the other horror movies that came out in 2004. Saw, the Dawn of the Dead remake, The Grudge. These are all very serious, bleak horror movies, and Seed of Chucky provides a funny, light-hearted alternative. That and Shaun of the Dead, a classic for one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, Edgar Wright, which also came out in 2004. A Seed of Chucky, Shaun of the Dead double feature would be a grand, silly old time at the theater. Seed of Chucky was also ahead of its time in terms of gender identity representation. Chucky's child, brilliantly voiced by Billy Boyd, whose name is originally given as is an adorable David Bowie-looking doll who identifies as non-binary. They are given the names Glenn and Glenda by their parents, and their name is eventually shortened to Gigi in the show, so for the sake of simplicity, that's how I will refer to them. Gigi's gender identity is a much more progressive storyline than you'll find in most movies from 2004, especially horror movies. Don Mancini, who is also a member of the LGBTQ+ community, has always included characters and storylines ahead of their times.
I started injecting kind of LGBTQ content into the franchise, starting with Bride.
Another testament to what a rad guy he is.
Of you.
What's most important, I think, is that Gigi's gender identity is never played as a joke. What is played as a joke is how often they piss their pants.
You're pissing your pants! You're pissing your pants! You're pissing your pants!
Another noteworthy positive aspect of Seed is Jennifer Tilly playing not only Tiffany, but also a fictionalized version of herself.
Jennifer Tilly.
She's able to poke fun at herself and seems like she's having a genuinely good time.
I should have played Aaron Brockovich. I could have done it without the Wonder Bra.
Also in the cast are Tony Gardner, real-life Chucky puppeteer, playing a version of himself, and John Waters, famed director of Pink Flamingos and Hairspray, who plays a character named Pete Peters. Both get very memorable death scenes, and I love their inclusion in this movie. Also, look how funny this is. This is tied for my favorite movie running scene with the one from Wet Hot American Summer. Incredible. As for the negatives, there are valid criticisms. While parts of Seed are ahead of its time, other parts are very much not, such as the nonchalant handling of plot points about some of the sleazy inner workings of Hollywood, which haven't aged great. Some of the sets look questionable, and rapper Redman playing a version of himself who's a director feels strange, because Redman is not a director, nor does he really seem like an actor. The role was originally intended for Quentin Tarantino, which makes sense, but Redman is an odd fallback. Overall, Seed of Chucky is a little uneven and polarizing to say the least, but I enjoy it and feel comfortable putting it at number 6.
Fuck you very much.
Number 5, Cult of Chucky.
Welcome to the cult, pal.
It seems that most people don't like Cult as much as Curse, but come on guys, it's so much fun. Don's back in the director's chair and Fiona Dourif returns as Nika Pierce, this time dealing with Chucky against the backdrop of a psychiatric institution. I like the aesthetic of the movie, and there are some prime Chucky kills, and the movie goes cuckoo batshit bananas sometimes, which you know I thoroughly enjoy. This is also the first instance of Chucky splitting his soul into multiple dolls, which becomes a major plot point in the show. Oh, and how can I almost forget the return of Alex Vincent as Andy Barkley after a post-credits scene in Curse, as well as another appearance from the incomparable Jennifer Tilly. Get out of town, this movie's a hoot and a half. Number 4, Child's Play, 1988. The movie that started it all. Directed by Tom Holland. No, not that one. This one. Child's Play is the first movie to star Alex Vincent as Andy Barkley, and oh my god, look at him. Don't you just want to swaddle him and feed him soup? The opening scene of the movie is the inciting incident of the whole franchise, how Chucky became a living doll. Charles Lee Ray is a notorious serial killer known as the Lakeshore Strangler, who's on the run from the police and takes shelter in a toy store. He's played by Brad Dourif, a wonderful acting talent who has lent himself to such works as the Lord of the Rings franchise, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and the original Dune, just to name a few. When Charles is shot and dying, he uses a voodoo incantation to transfer his soul into a good guy doll, and thus a legend was born. Chris Sarandon also plays a detective in this movie. You might know him from The Princess Bride, Dog Day Afternoon, or from being Susan Sarandon's ex-husband. This movie is a bit more subdued than many of the sequels, but there are many shots and moments that are fantastic, and the movie is a lot of fun. Like, Jesus Christ, look at that! And Andy in his puffy jacket? The cutest thing I've ever seen. Look at how much butter he's putting on that horrendously burnt piece of toast. And he's also a wordsmith.
I have to go tinkle.
I love Andy.
This is the end, friend.
Number 3, Child's Play 2.
Kill him!
Andy, stop it, will you?
Child's Play 2 is considered by many fans to be their favorite of the 8 movies, and I totally get it. It was mine for a while too. Child's Play 2 takes all the things people loved from the original, strips away anything extraneous, and turns the volume up a notch. Alex Vincent is back as Andy, a little older, but still looking like you'd want to push him on the swing and read him a bedtime story. And I have to say, Andy is straight up hilarious in this one.
Want to hear me say your name backwards? Kyle.
Kids, smoking is bad, and you shouldn't do it, but look how funny this is. Andy's such a cheeky bastard.
Gangster shit.
In this movie, Andy's in a foster home where we meet Kyle, played by Christina Leese, an all-time great addition to the Child's Play universe. Andy and Kyle are a dynamic duo, and I love their relationship. As for Chucky, his one-liners are better.
How's it hanging, Phil?
His design looks better than the first, and his kills are more inventive. He just wants to test Miss Kettlewell's commitment to sparkle motion. The final showdown takes place in the Good Guy toy factory, and it's so kick-ass. If you've never seen it, the movie is worth it just for that final act. Child's Play 2 is a really great horror sequel.
Where's home?
Andy, I have no idea.
Number 2, Bride of Chucky.
Rude fucking doll.
But you know what's an even better horror sequel? Bride of Chucky. The titular character is Tiffany, played by the one and only Jennifer Tilly. She and Brad Dourif are phenomenal together as the destructive doll duo, and the movie itself has a vibe that I could just slurp up like the soup I want to feed Andy. The movie leans hard into the tropes that make the franchise fun, perfectly riding the line between comedy and horror.
In fact, if it was a movie, it would take 3 or 4 sequels just to do it justice.
While Seed is definitely more comedy than horror, Bride has an equal mix of both, giving us great kills as well as funny lines I'll never forget.
Look at me! I'm all rubber.
Oh, that's right. Wait, I thought you were plastic.
This movie is directed by Ronnie Yu, who would go on to direct Freddy vs. Jason 5 years later, but I think Bride of Chucky is a much better movie. Bride also stars Katherine Heigl, John Ritter from Three's Company, and Alexis Arquette, the most underrated Arquette in my opinion, in a small but very memorable role.
What is it?
You mean who is it?
Who is it?
You mean who was it?
Multiple Arquette siblings have starred in major horror franchises, so I'm glad Alexis got to join in on the fun. Bride also gave the franchise its first LGBTQ+ character in David, a man with very 90s hair who is not named Graham, no matter how much my siblings want him to be.
What the fuck?
This movie also has one of my favorite horror title sequences, with Chucky getting stitched together, accompanied by Rob Zombie's Living Dead Girl, which is a banger of a song. Now, I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie's directorial work for some of his past movies, but Bride made me learn that I like some of his music, which is cool. Also, look how cool this explosion is. Number 1, the Chucky TV show.
We're gonna party like it's 1999.
As of the making of this video, the Chucky show has 2 seasons, and it's amazing. Don Mancini has really honed the craft of making Chucky content. He's distilled everything that came before and made a show that's funny,
I'm not a monster, Jake.
horrifying, dramatic, and emotional. I really can't say enough good things about the show, and I think you should watch it for yourself. Not only are there an incredible cast of returning legacy characters, there are a bunch of new teenage characters that are welcome additions to the Chucky extended family. These are characters played by extremely talented actors who are actually teenagers. None of this Riverdale 20-year-olds playing teenagers crap.
I'm weird.
Devon Sawa, star of Final Destination, Idle Hands, and Casper, also joins the cast. Chucky is so much fun to watch and continues the franchise trend of LGBTQ+ representation, this time in leading roles. Heck yeah. I hope the show goes 20 seasons and Chucky ends up in space. And there you have it, every Child's Play / Chucky ranked from worst to best. I know that my rankings probably aren't the same as yours, but that's part of the fun of doing this, isn't it? Let me know how the Child's Play / Chucky franchise stacks up in your eyes. And remember, never trust any dolls.
Dolls are fucked up.
Good night, asshole.